Hello and welcome to another tutorial on my channel, Create by Kay. I'm using a 3.5mm hook. I go with my slip knot. And now I chain 42. I have the 42 chains. Now what I need to do for row 1 is to add one more chain. If you go with 46, you still need to add one chain. And the same for 50. You need to add one chain for row 1. And then I skip the chain I just made into the second chain. I go grab the yarn and I make a slip stitch. And now I go in each chain and make a slip stitch. For row 2, I chain 1, I turn, I skip the chain I just made. This is my first stitch. What I do is I go in back loop only and make the slip stitch. I move to the next stitch, back loop only, and slip stitch. To the next one, back loop, slip stitch, back loop and slip stitch. So like this in each stitch. For row 3, chain 1, turn, skip the first chain I just made, in the first stitch, back loop only, go with slip stitch. Move to the next one, go with slip stitch, back loop only at each stitch, and then make the slip stitch. And I do like this until I have 40 slip stitch, back loop, slip stitch stitches. I will skip the last 2. I finish row 3, 40 stitches. I have the 2. I don't work, just leave it like that. And then I count 25 stitches and I add on the 25 I add the marker. Now doesn't matter if you go with 46 or with 50 chains, still on the stitch 25 you will go with the marker. On row 4, chain 1, turn, skip the first chain I just made into the stitch. This is the stitch, back loop only, slip stitch. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Now here I have a chain, a stitch. So what I do is I go in back loop, grab the yarn and make a loop, and keep the loop on my hook. Then I take the marker, I go in back loop of where the marker was, and then back loop to the next stitch, grab the yarn, pull through, so I make a decrease, and then now I have the 3 loops on my hook, grab the yarn and pull through all 3 loops. And on this stitch I go with the marker, and now I go into the next 23 stitches with back loop, slip stitch. Row 5, chain 1, turn, skip the first chain, the first stitch, back loop only, slip stitch, to the next, back loop only, slip stitch, and to the next one, slip stitch, back loop only, and like this in the 22 stitches. Now on this stitch I go and I make a loop, back loop, make a loop, take my marker, to the stitch I have the marker, back loop, and the next stitch I make the decrease, make a loop, 3 loops on my hook, grab the yarn and I pull through the 3 loops. Now I go to with the marker back on this stitch, and then into the next 11 stitches, back loop only, slip stitch. Row 6, chain 1, turn, in the next 10 stitches, back loop only, slip stitch, then into the 11 I go with a loop, then I take my marker, go into the marker, chain with the no, actually I go like this, then to the next one and make a loop, 3 loops and pull through. Now I go with the marker back on this stitch, and then I finish the row with back loop, slip stitch in each stitch. Row 7, chain 1, turn, and I go with into the next 20 stitches, back loop, slip stitch. And now right here I go with my loop, then I take the marker and I go and make my decrease, I go with the marker back, and now I go with 13 slip stitches, back loop only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, 11, Now I go with my 12 and the last one 13. For row 8, chain 1, turn, back loop in the next 12 stitches, I go and make a loop on this stitch, back loop, take my marker, go with my decrease, I go with my marker back and into the next 19 stitches, back loop, slip stitch. For row 9, chain 1, turn, into the next 18 stitches I go with back loop, slip stitch, and then right here I make my loop, then I take the marker, I make the decrease, and I go with 11 slip stitches. Row 10, I go in each stitch with a slip stitch back loop, chain 1, turn, go with the slip stitch in each stitch, go with a slip stitch in that stitch, take my marker, slip stitch, go back with my marker and finish the stitches with back loop stitches, slip stitch, oh my god, sorry, a back loop slip stitch in each stitch to finish row 10. And for row 11 and 12 I repeat row 10, so I go with slip stitch in each stitch, 2 more rows. For row 13 I have 26 slip stitch and I have 1, 2, 3 and 4 chains I just skipped. Now for row 14 I chain 1 and I go into the 26 stitches with slip stitch, back loop only, all the time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, take my marker, 8, go with my marker back, and I continue like this in the rest of my stitches. Row 15 I will have 28. I have 26 stitches. Now I go with my 27 and the 28, and I have 2 which I skipped. For row 16 I chain 1 and I go into the 28 stitches, back loop, slip stitch. Row 17 I already did the 28 back loop slip stitch And now I go with my 29 and 30, and this is row 17. Now for row 18 I chain 1, turn, and I go with back loop, slip stitch in each stitch, so 30 stitches. Then I will repeat on row 19 and 20 the same, the 30 slip back loop slip stitches. And I see you on row 21. On row 21 I will go with back loop slip stitch into the next 28 stitches. I have the 28 back loop slip stitches. I skip the 2 of them to the last 2 stitches. Then for row 22 chain 1, and I turn and I go with 28 back loop slip stitches. Row 23 I did 26 back loop slip stitches. I have 2 stitches which I don't work on. Now for row 24 I chain 1 and I go in the next 26 stitches with back loop slip stitches. I take the marker, I go in the back loop of that stitch and make the slip stitch, and I go with the marker back and I continue with the back loop slip stitch in each stitch. Row 25 I did already the 26 back loop slip stitches, but I need the 30 back loop slip stitches. So I have the 26. Now I go with my 27, 28, 29 and the 30. And now row 26 and 27 I will go with the 30 back loop slip stitches. Oopsie. Back loop slip stitches in each stitch. This is row 26, and then I will come back row 27. On row 28 chain 1, turn. In the next 11 stitches I go with back loop slip stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. Now I take the marker, and right here on the marker I go in both loops, and make 3 single crochet. 1, go back, 2, go back, and 3. Now I go with the marker back in stitch single crochet the second one, and to the second one I go with the marker. And now I go into the next 18 stitches with back loop, slip stitch. I'm on row 29. I did 19 back loop slip stitches. Now I'm on the stitch, or the marker, sorry, I'm on the marker. Take the marker, go in both loops and make 3 single crochet. 1, 2 and 3. Take the marker. This is my first single crochet, my second I go with the marker. And now in the next 12 stitches, back loop, slip stitch. For row 30, I chain 1, I turn. In the next 13 stitches, I go with back loop, slip stitch. On stitch 14, take the marker, I go in both loops and make my 3 single crochet. Take the marker again and I count 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, I go with my marker. And now in the next 20 stitches, I go with the back loop, slip stitch. Row 31, I have 21 back loop slip stitches. In the 22, take the marker, both loops and make the 3 single crochet. Take the marker and I go my first single crochet, my second I go with the marker. And now into the next 10 stitches, back loop, slip stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, up, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, and I have 4 left, 1, 2, 3 and 4 stitches. Row 32, chain 1, turn. In the next 11 stitches, back loop, slip stitch. Stitch 12, take the marker and I go with the 3 single crochet. To the second single crochet, go the marker. Then into the next 22, I go with back loop, slip stitch. row 33, I did 23 back loop slip stitch, and now I take the marker, I go with 3 single crochet, go back with the marker on the second single crochet, and then I go in with 14 slip stitches, back loop slip stitches. 1, 2, 3, oopsie, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and now 2 more, 13 and 14. Row 34, I don't need the marker anymore, chain 1, and I go into the each stitch, I have 40 stitches, back loop slip stitch. Row 35, I did the 40 back loop slip stitch, and now I go with 41 and 42, chain 1. Now I need to connect them, so what I do is I go right here, what is my first stitch, I go with my hook right there, and then I grab this loop and I pull through, make a slip stitch. Now I go to the next one from here, and then I go to back loop from the other side, grab the yarn and make my slip stitch, and again I go right here and then back loop from the other side, grab the yarn and make my slip stitch. Like this all the way. Make a chain and then I cut the yarn